And we must ask that because we are just coming out of an election period. And if you look at our records, there are dozens of journalists who came under attack, who came under threats by politicians and by goons hired by politicians for no sin other than for doing their job. We owe these fellow citizens a duty to make sure that their cases are not pushed under the carpet. I'm sure as the day goes by, we'll get to the details, because the stakeholders working group has a record of every incident that happened. But we must also ask ourselves, in the year 2022, in the year when the media business has become so sophisticated, at a time when the world is so connected, is it enough to define impunity so narrowly? I'd like to invite us that maybe this is the time to also consider impunity delivered through soft channels. And the biggest of them is the soft economic channel. And in that, ask ourselves, who are the perpetrators of economic crimes against individual journalists, and who are the perpetrators of economic crimes against the media sector as an industry? Our young people, our professionals, our entities toil day and night to create value in the media. But we find that this value is not always invested in the growth of the media and in the development of this same media. Questions must be asked, and maybe we need to invite the bright minds around the room to help us then see how do we structure media policy, how do we structure a legal framework to make sure that value created in the media business, a good chunk of it, is reinvested to ensure that the media business grows, not just as a business, but I believe that a true reading of our Constitution embeds a suggestion that where our media fails, our society begins to falter. Because as a democracy, we depend on timely delivery of verifiable and reliable information for our citizenry to participate in their lives as Kenyans and in the development of our country. And that leads me to the second issue I'd like to raise, the whole question of media independence, because the media cannot serve and deliver on its purpose as defined in Articles 33 to 35 unless it is independent, and not just independent, seen to be independent by the people whom we serve. That's our audience, that's the Kenyan people. We have to unpack that question by maybe borrowing from those who have done this and delivered editorial independence for their publics in a better way. And that notion invites me to consider the United Kingdom and look at what the United Kingdom has done with the BBC. The BBC is a public body, but some of the best journalistic and media standards are embodied by the BBC. The effect of that reality is that any journalist, any media operating in the UK must do better than the BBC or atrophy or die. We have our own KBC. We have our own KNA. By investing in these entities and getting them to set minimum standards for practice of journalism and for practice of media. We not only do justice to colleagues working in those spaces and to the citizens of Kenya, we also would then have a positive influence in the private media, because what it will then mean is that the private media must then pull up their socks and raise their standards or die. When Waziri, I believe this is a matter that you're probably looking at, but you're also the single individual who has the biggest influence in how it moves forward. Second question around media independence comes to the whole essence of commercial success, because as we sit here today, the media mandate has been handed to commercial entities to deliver for the Kenyan people. Because of a host of factors, business is tough. Let's not lie to ourselves. Commercial entities exist to chase profits, and where there are not enough revenues, many of them will quickly default to cutting costs. But media and journalism is not just another commercial product. Where we have a reduction in supply, the public suffers. So I want to invite us to also consider that question. How do we create an ecosystem that ensures that critical talent, professionals, and do-gooders in the journalism space have a sustainable way in which to keep doing that good? The third and second last thing I'd like to talk about connects to that commercial question, and it leads us to the whole area of media sustainability. How do we make sure that on an ongoing basis there's a way in which we can pay for journalism, there's a way in which truly independent media voices flourish, and not just flourish, but also gets to thrive, whether they be in the public sector or the private sector. Today, we have some policies which, on the face of them, seem like they're good policies, but in reality, I think they take away from the ability of the media to be sustainable as we stand here today.